Good morning, Rabbi Sai. Welcome to Yoma Yud Beis. It's Yoma Daf 12. It's a privilege to be back again for one more day, filling in for Rabbi Silber. We do have sponsors according to the bulletin. We have a Talmud Torah sponsorship by Yona Shushie Ehrenfeld in loving memory and the nishmas, their grandfather, Yosef ben Shmuel Aron Zol, and a week of learning sponsored by Jack Bennett in memory of Sergeant Nikolai Rappaport of Givati, who was killed in Lebanon by Hezbollah in February 7th, 1998. Maybe other sponsors, thank you as well. Thank you to all our sponsors for keeping the lights on and the coffee flowing. Shkoyach, everybody. We were discussing yesterday, we wrapped up talking about mezuzah. We went to mezuzah land yesterday, and we mentioned Onkelos the Ger, who was very famous for converting Judaism. Hadrian tried to bring him back. He touched the mezuzah on the way out and got the Roman soldiers to see the light of Judaism. Hadrian gave up, and then later they met, and Hadrian said, why did you become Jewish? He says, follow your advice, buy low, sell high. People did not value Jewish wisdom, and it will become the most invaluable resource in the world. Now, Onkelos the Ger wrote the Targum Onkelos, which appears in the Chumashim, those blue Chumashim around the room, and we have an ancient minhag. It's called Shnayim Mikra Echad Targum. That means you read the Torah twice and the Targum once, and that's referring to the Targum Onkelos, and that's a great way to learn. You should know that in modern times, a lot of modern poskim say it's perhaps preferable that somebody reads the original pasuk twice and then the vernacular, the English, Spanish, Russian, whatever you understand, that might be a preferable way to learn through the Chumash, to learn the Parsha of the Shvuah, the Parsha of the week, because not everyone's familiar with the Onkelos and the Aramaic. So it could be adif. Some people even say to learn the pasuk twice and then learn the Rashi on the pasuk is also a great way to go through the Chumash every week and to get that also. Of course, we're all Shas Yidden. We're learning Gemara. We're steiging in the Gemara every single day. But yeah, to learn the Chumash is also very, very chashuv. Rabbi Yosef he says that the Targum Onkelos is also very important. And he says it's very important, if you can, to read the Targum Onkelos, even if you don't understand literally everything. You'll see, because we're learning Shas, that the Aramaic here is not so different from the Aramaic in the Targum Onkelos. So if you start to look at the Targum Onkelos, you're going to see a lot of familiar words and grammar that we see in the Gemara. You're not going to break your teeth on it. It'll be beautiful. So in any event, the Shnayim Mikra Echad Targum, however you fulfill it, the Chumash is also very important. We are learning Talmud Bavli, and Bavli means balul. It's mixed up. There's psukim. We get some psukim in our Bavli also, but to go back and read the Chumash, it's not just for the school children. It's for all of us also. I had a couple people ask me things about mezuzah yesterday, and I am not a posek, and I don't play a posek on TV, but I can try to point you in the right direction. And to put a mezuzah on a shed is not so simple. Yesterday we talked about storage rooms, barns, a wood shed. And we said that there's a shita, those require a mezuzah. Even if your wife is not doing her makeup in them, they might require a mezuzah. And it turns out that there are requirements. So I looked up, the OU lists some requirements, Talmud lists some requirements. And there's a minimum size is 4x4 amot to be a chashuv room. We also know it needs a door 10 tefachim tall. That's about 32 inches tall. We discussed that yesterday about the archway. Rabbi Meir said the archway needs, and the Chachamim said only if it's a minimum certain size, 4 tefachim wide and 10 tefachim tall for the doorway. We need door posts. And the size of the room should be 4x4 amos. So, it's about 6.5 feet. Some people say 7 feet. A bit of a machlokus exactly about the amma. So maybe if you have a shed that's 7x7, that might already need a mezuzah. But wait, there's more. It's not so pashut. So the Star K publishes Kashrus Currents, which it's a gewaldige read. It's a great read. Back in 2008, they had an article. They had a shaila about this, and they wrote. Rabbi Frankel's writing. He says, even though no one lives in a barn or grain silo, it still requires a mezuzah because the owner uses the room and will enter it whenever the need arises. Rav Moshe Feinstein was of opinion that even an infrequently accessed storeroom still requires a mezuzah, since the owner will enter at some point to retrieve an item stored there. However, Rav Elashiv said a storage room requires mezuzah only if it's frequented on a regular basis. Rabbi Heinemann feels that a storage room needs a mezuzah only if it's accessed at least once every 30 days. So you see, if it's just a room with stuff in it you never go into, we're talking about a room outside, a shed, something like this, it might not need it all because you're not really going there. Now the Ben Ish Chai suggests that a storage room requires a mezuzah only when the items within will be used in the owner's house. Since the storage room is used for the needs of the house, it's considered adjunct to the house and requires a mezuzah. So, and he differentiates, but a shop in the marketplace, you don't take things from your shop in the shuk to your home. And apparently the Britzner Rav also suggested the same thing. So it seems that as we learned from yesterday, the places in question, the woodshed, the barn, you're going to the barn to get eggs or to get milk. You're going to the woodshed to get wood for your kitchen. So all of these outbuildings serve the house, so that's why they would need a mezuzah. But maybe a shed or a storage unit that doesn't, you're not taking things from there into the house, might not need a mezuzah at all. So it is a shaila. I'm not a posek, but it is a shaila if you have a big enough room, 4x4 amos, arba amos square, or the equivalent size. It could be a shaila if such a thing needs a mezuzah, but we see Starkano, you have some guidance. It might not need a mezuzah. It might need a mezuzah without a bracha, as we're going to see further on about a Beit Knesset today. So that's where we kind of left off. We were talking about a Beit Knesset. If a Beit Knesset needs a mezuzah, and it was a machlokis, we have Meir and the Chachamim, and we said maybe we differentiate between the krachim and the kfarim. A krach, of course, is a big city with a lot of people coming and going. You can't say the Beit Knesset is owned by one person or one group. But a kfar, a village, it's a little shtibel, and everyone knows everyone, and everyone chipped in to build the building. So it's like a building owned by partners, which we say would need a mezuzah and could become tamei tzara. So that's what we're picking up on the very top line of Yud Beis 12a. Right in the middle there, it says, "Krachim ein metame benegayim." Can a city Beit Knesset not become metame with tzaras? Can get the spots on the wall and become tamei hatanya, but a brisa reveals otherwise. Achuzatchem. The pasuk says achuzatchem. So it says that tzaras could appear in a building in your achuza, in your inheritance. Achuzatchem metame benegayim. So something you can inherit can become tamei with tzaras. Ve'ein Yerushalayim metame benegayim. Yerushalayim itself cannot become tamei. So buildings in Yerushalayim are impervious and immune to tzaras. Amar Rav Yehuda, ani lo shamati ala makom mikdash bilvad. Rav Yehuda says, I heard the exclusion, the immunity is only for the Beis HaMikdash. Bate Knesiot, Bate Midrashot, but Beit Knesset, Beit Medrash, metamim b'negayim, that could become tamei with negayim. So you see from here that even a big city shul might become tamei with tzaras. V'afalgav dekrachim ninhu, even though it's in a big city and it doesn't have one particular person or group that could be said to be the owner. Ema Amar Rabbi Yehuda, we could say that what did Rabbi Yehuda really say? Anilo shamate ela makom mikudash bilvad. He didn't necessarily say makom mikdash, meaning the base of mikdash. He said makom mikudash, meaning a Beit Knesset, a base medrash, that those places might be immune to tzaras. But so what is the machlokas here about this brisa achuzatchem, that your Yerusha, maybe it can't become tamei, it could become tamei, but not Yerushalayim. Tanakama Savar, the first opinion holds Yerushalayim lo mitchalka l'shvatim. Yerushalayim itself was not divided among the shvatim. Now I know when the Jews originally came, when our ancestors came into Eretz Yisrael, they divided it up. And Yerushalayim was actually conquered later from the Yevusim, and David the Melech famously bought the spot for the Mikdash from Aravna the Yevusi. Of course, it was a spot where there had been two brothers there. We know the famous story. It's a medrash, it's somewhere. But the two brothers, one had children, one had no children. They kept giving each other grain because they each thought the other brother needed. And then they met in the middle and they hugged. There's a famous story. There's another story, and it's a little early for a joke, but Rebbe always began with a joke. There's another famous story that riffs off of that one. And it goes, the two brothers met and they started to beat each other up. And on that hill was built the Knesset. So it's a version. It's a version based on the Medrash, alternate version. But we know the famous Medrash. The brothers met and they hugged, and eventually David HaMelech bought that land from the Yevusi. And because David HaMelech collected money to buy that land from every single shevet, so every shevet pitched in equally to buy the Har HaBayis from Aravna the Yevusi. Remember, we had that famous discussion about they found his skull later on. It might have rolled under the tunnel, and there was a question about the tummy. We had this in Pesachim. They found the part of Aravna the Yevusi under the Har HaBayis at some point, centuries later, and it was a question about the Tuma being nidche b'tzibur for that. So it was not divided among Shvatim because every shevet had a chelik in the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Yehuda saw Yerushalayim nidchagel l'Shvatim. Rabbi Yehuda, who says that only the Makom Mikdash was immune, he says that Yerushalayim was divided among the Shvatim. Plukta Chani Tanai, and it's actually another machlokes Tanaim about the land of the Beis HaMikdash. The Tanya, and this is review from Zvachim. Rabosa, we had this in Zvachim just a couple of years ago. What was in the chelik of Yehuda, in Yehuda's tribal territory, Har HaBayis itself, Shakot, and the offices, the rooms around the Har HaBayis, V'Zarot, and the courtyards of the temple. Machaya bechelko shel Binyamin, and what was in Binyamin's tribal real estate. Ulam v'heichel. Now remember that how the temple's built is described like a crouching lion. It's wider in the front. That's the wide section called the ulam, the antechamber. V'heichel is the back section where all a lot of the good stuff happens, and that's kind of like the back of the lion. Beit Kodesh HaKadoshim, and that's where the Beit Kodesh HaKadoshim is, the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum is there. Ritzuya Haita Yotze Mechelkel Shel Yehuda Niknosa Lechelkel Shel Binyamin. But there was a little strip, a little section coming out. The art scroll actually has a shaded diagram. It's nice, but there's a little section coming out of Yehuda where the Uvah Haya Mizbeach Banui, and on there the Mizbeach is built. And when what happened? Binyamin et Tzaddik Hayim Mitztayer Alea Levola. And Binyamin wanted to absorb that land into his territory. So see, fighting over land in Eretz Yisrael is not new. It's been going on for millennia. B'chol Yom, every day, Binyamin the Tzaddik wanted that land that the Mizbeach would be built on. Shneamar, like it says in Moshe's bracha to the Shevet of Binyamin, Chofef alav kol hayom. He's hovering over it, or he's worrying about it all day long. Binyamin was mitzayer, was pained that he wouldn't have the Mizbeach. Lefichach zocha Binyamin. Therefore, Binyamin was zocha Binyamin at Tzaddik v'nase ushpizchan legevura. So therefore, Binyamin the Tzaddik became the host for the strength of the Almighty. Shneamar ben ketafav shachen. That was the end of this pasuk of Chofef alav kol hayom ben ketafav shachen. Moshe's bracha to the Shevet that Binyamin is the resting place for the Shekhinah. Interestingly, the Rashi says that the Aron, the Kodesh Kodashim in the Aron was in the Chelik Shel Binyamin, but we know, at least our scroll tells us on their little map, that the Mizbeach itself was actually in the Shevet of Binyamin, except for one little corner. Now we remember from our Zvachim days and from learning Midos that the Mizbeach on the southeast corner didn't have Yesod. The Yesod was the base layer, 1 amma tall, was going all the way around the Mizbeach, except for that one corner. And that one corner is actually apparently in the tribal territory of Yehuda. So it seems that even though Binyamin got the land on which the entire Mizbeach was built, the actual structure of the Mizbeach was built, it was that one corner that didn't have Yesod that he was so bothered by, a 1 amma by 1 amma. So we see from here, Binyamin a tzaddik, he's a tzaddik. He was upset about his avodas Hashem, his perfection lacking even 1 amma bothered him. The Mizbeach, of course, is 32 by 32 amot. It's huge. It's very large. And, a lot of things going on. Three fires going on there at all times. He's worried about a 1 amma by 1 amma corner. So that made him a tzaddik. So we need to worry. Of course, we're not a tzaddik like Binyamin, but we need to worry also. Interestingly, they call him Binyamin a tzaddik twice here. There's a Gemara in Shabbos. It says Binyamin was one of the 4 people who never sinned. It's interesting. They list there, it's Amram, Yishai, Kilov, and Binyamin a tzaddik. And all these 4 people they're famous and great people in Jewish history, but you should note that all of them were not the leaders of their generation. They were close to leadership. You understand, Yishai was the father of David, Amram the father of Moshe, Kilov was the son of David, and all of them were close to leadership but never became leaders. Because if they become leaders of both sides, someone would have had a problem with them, someone would have said they sinned. You can never, public opinion, you can never please everyone. So this is why we can say they never sinned, because Baruch Hashem, they were tzaddikim, they were very worried about even a 1 amma lack in their avodas Hashem. But Baruch Hashem, you should know, you can't please everybody. So, I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but this is why you call him Binyamin a tzaddik. So good. So this is about the Mizbeach and the tribal territory of the temple. So it's a machlokes if it was divided between Binyamin and Yehuda. The Haitana and the other opinion, Savar Yerushalayim lo nitchalka l'shvatim. He holds that Yerushalayim itself was not divided into tribes. So it was not divided to be personal property to be owned by individuals. Tanya, like the Brisa teaches, Ein maskirin batim b'Yerushalayim. You can't rent out homes in Yerushalayim. This is talking about during a regel. When all of Yisrael is ole regel, someone who quote unquote owns land or a building in Yerushalayim is not permitted to rent it out. Visha eina shelahen. It's not really theirs because they're of a specific shevet or a specific tribe, and Yerushalayim doesn't belong to a tribe. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Tzadok, Omer aflo mitat. You can't even rent out a bed. If you owned an inn, okay, you could rent out to tourists, but for Olei Regolim, when all of Am Yisrael came to be Olei Regel, to come for the festivals, you couldn't even rent out beds because you don't really own it. Yerushalayim was not the property of a shevet. So it was sort of this concept of it was kind of a no man's land, but it was like for every Shevet. So you had no personal right to charge another Jew money to sleep in Yerushalayim. Lefichach urot kodshim, therefore the skins, the hides of sacrifices, bali ushpezichnin nadli natan bezroa. The hosts could take them even by force. Now, that sounds very strange. So what's going on is Ole Regel came and they brought their carbon simcha, they brought their carbon re'iyah, because they're showing up in Yerushalayim, they have to bring a carbon, they have to bring their shlamim, so they have something to eat for their festival. Of course, we learned in Pesachim recently that they would bring a shlamim chagiga, they bring their chagiga, and then they would eat their Pesachim at the end, nechal ala sova. So they'd have their chagiga first, and they have their Pesachim at the end. So all these hides for these various animals that they slaughtered during the festival, the minhag, and it was really a takana, the rabbi said, listen, the innkeepers, the homeowners, they can't charge you anything. The derech eretz thing to do is to give them the hides. And if you don't, then they'll just take them. That's what it is. They're not allowed to charge rent or to charge you anything. So really the derech eretz thing to do is to give them something. Amar Abaye, Shema Mina, Abaye says, learn out from here. Orech Arya lemishpak inish gulfa. It's derech eretz, a person to leave his pitcher. Umashcha for his host. So he could leave his pitcher and the skins for his host. What's going on is he was staying with somebody and he went out and he bought a jug of oil or a jug of wine. They leave him the jug. You went out and slaughtered an animal, made barbecue, so leave him the skin, leave him something useful. As it's a tip, but it's a way of saying really thank you for your hospitality, because maybe he doesn't want to charge you. So even if it's an inn, maybe you just show him thank you for your hospitality. So it's a very chashuv thing to say thanks for hospitality. We know that the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians themselves, the Mitzrayim, were allowed to convert to Judaism because we're very thankful for their hospitality. The same Mitzrayim that were enslaving us and abusing us and were terrible, God forbid, doing horrible things, throwing babies in the Nile, but their descendants are allowed to convert to Judaism out of our thankfulness for their hospitality, for taking us in. It's an amazing concept. Whereas Ammon and Moab, these other nations that were anti-hospitable, they can never convert into Judaism because they're just not hospitable. It's really the mark of a Jew, is to be able to really give and host and bring people in and make them comfortable. It's a beautiful thing. You should know this. Ein maskrin batim b'Yerushalayim. It's still kind of true. Has anyone heard of the Israel Land Authority? Yeah, I got some. Yeah. So how do you buy land in Israel? Chazag v'ruch, has to be leased. You can't buy land in Israel. 93% of the land is under the control of the ILA, the Israel Land Authority, formerly Israel Land Agency. You can't really buy it. You lease it for 49 years. That sounds familiar because that's a Yovel cycle. It happens to be someone in the Knesset in 1948 read the Bible at some point. He was doing Shnai Mikra, and he said, we'll just lease it out for 49 years. It'll be great. We won't actually... So you don't actually buy land, and most of the land, 93% of the land, is owned by ILA, owned by the state, and you lease it out for 49 years. You don't really buy it. So it's the same concept that the land of Israel, even today, is it's not really yours. It's not really until Mashiach comes and reveals who is in which shevet, which land is in which shevet, where we should all go, where our achuzatchem, where our real inheritance should be. So until then, we let the state take care of the land, and they lease it out temporarily. They don't lease it out to foreign corporations because it's really the land of all of Am Yisrael, not of one shevet at this point, not yet. So that's an interesting thing about the ILA, Chazag v'ruch, that you knew. So now we go back to the question, do the shuls in villages become tameh b'negayim? So we said that the shuls in villages are a little different because the shtibel there, everybody knows everybody. It's in a kfar, it's in a little village. Everyone knows everyone at the shtibel. And so it's like partners, so it's a little different. Maybe it could become a tameh b'negayim, v'atanya, but there's a brisa that says otherwise, la'achuza. So you only get tzarat, this is talking about getting tzarat in a bayit, in your achuza, when you've inherited the land. Ad sheyichbashu, until after you've conquered the land. Remember, there were 7 years of conquest when Yehoshua led Am Yisrael in battle against the other nations that were in Israel. It took 7 years to conquer the land. Ad sheyichbashu asa, until you conquer the land. Kivshu asa, if you've conquered the land, v'lo chilkua, but you haven't divided it up, l'shvatim, to the 12 tribes. Or chilku l'shvatim, you've divided to the 12 tribes. V'lo chilku l'beit avot, you haven't divided it to the houses of the fathers, to the large family units that had left Mitzrayim. Hilku l'beit avot, you've even divided it among the beit avot, those big families. Ve'en kol echad makir et shelo, but a person doesn't really know exactly where his own plot of land in Israel is. Minayin, how do you know that it's not tameh with negaim yet? Talmud lomar ova asher lo habayit. The person who owns this particular house that has the spots in it, he comes to the Kohen to see if it's tzara'at. So if you don't know exactly where your own territory is for your own personal family, then tzara'at doesn't apply. And that was 7 years of conquest plus 7 years of dividing up the nachala, dividing up the land. So it was not until 14 years after we entered Eretz Yisrael that the laws of tzara'at applied. And this is asher lo habayit mishem yuchad lo. So this is only a person who the house is definitely his. Yatsa elu, this excludes these people during the 7 years of conquest, the 7 years of dividing. Shen mehuyadin lo, so it excludes people that it's not definitely theirs. So that would seem to exclude a Beit Knesset of the Kfar, but we could say, again, maybe it's Shutfim. Maybe they all got together formally and bought this property as partners and built a shtibel there. So maybe it is really miyachad them. So rather it's better, like we said before, which was the very end of yesterday's daf, that a Beit Knesset that has a Beit Dira, that has a residence for the Chazan, which is the Shamesh or the Gabbai, so that needs a mezuzah. But Stam a Beit Knesset doesn't need a mezuzah. Now look around, Rabbi, say we Baruch Hashem, we have mezuzot on all the doors. So it's an interesting thing. We have mezuzot even though we don't need them. But there's a Shulchan Aruch, don't worry, and he gives us a hint as to why this is. So I've got the Shulchan Aruch open. We didn't get to it yesterday, but the Shulchan Aruch said we were talking about yesterday. So there's Chazar, Beit Tevin, Beit Eitzim, Beit Bakar. Remember, this is the barns, the woodshed. The Chayavin, if women wash in them, Kevan Sha'amdin Shama Rimot, Ein Kavod Shemaim Liyot Sham Mezuzah. It's not so Kavod Shemaim. Remember that was the chiluk yesterday. If they're washing there and they're unclothed, maybe it shouldn't have a mezuzah. But if not, stam, they should have a mezuzah because again they serve the house, like the Ben Ish Chai had said about a shed that serves the house. You take things from there into the house. So that's from yesterday. He also says interestingly another thing in Halacha Chei. This is in Yoredeya Refu 286. It says in Halacha Chei, b'makam sheish tinuf, a dirty place. The kids are there. It's a laundry room, something like this. Tov lechasot the mezuzah. It's good to cover the mezuzah. This is very interesting. Makam tahira tov liyos niris. So our minhag now is we always cover them. But it seems that even 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it was not uncommon that the mezuzah scroll itself was you could touch the scroll itself. It wasn't necessarily covered with something permanent and sealed off. So nowadays we have they're sealed off, and it's a good thing for them. We said yesterday actually we should check them pa'amayim b'shavua, twice in 7 years. There are some authorities. I even wrote it down yesterday. Rav Shlomo Zalman Arbach says that a mezuzah, it's sealed in a case. If it's nicely sealed, you don't really have to check it. You rely on the chazaka. It was written correctly, as long as you got from a reputable sofer. It was written correctly. If it's sealed off, you shouldn't have to check it. It's the mezuzot that are exposed to the elements. There's wind, there's rain, there's sun. That's where you might have a problem. He says the same for tefillin also, that if your tefillin has no reusa, it never got left in a hot car or got schwitz on it or something like this, he says the same thing. That's Rav Shlomo Zalman Arbach. Says it's a little different than it used to be by tefillin and mezuzot, that ours are very well sealed, so you shouldn't have to check them very often. So this is the makom sheish tinuf. It was good to cover it. Anyway, okay, so that was all Chazara. Getting to today, so halacha yud. He says Beit HaMidrash pater me mezuzah im yesh bo petach sheraga letzet bo lebeto. If it's connected to a house, chayiv b'mezuzah be'oto petach on that door. Yesh omrim shebeit HaMidrash chayiv b'mezuzah. So some people say a Beit Medrash has to have a mezuzah. Nachon nachush devrehim. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, it's proper to worry about their opinion. But we don't make a bracha putting the mezuzah on the Beis Medrash, but we do put a mezuzah on the Beis Medrash. So our shul is a Beis Medrash right this second. This is Beis Medrash. A Beit Knesset is a room that's only for tefillah. A room where you also learn Torah is a Beis Medrash. So this room is a halacha of the Beis Medrash, which is good. It's good. It's a shtickle pikuach nefesh because you can't drink coffee in a Beit Knesset. But a Beis Medrash you can. And if someone's learning there all day, but kaviyas, if someone's mamash, he's sitting in the Beis Medrash learning all day, he's sitting at his table steiging, he could even bring his lunch. He could even take a little shluff after lunch, because it's a Beis Medrash. It's not quite the same as a Beit Knesset. So really we build our Bate Knesiot al Tanai, we kind of allow a little bit of eating and drinking, a little bit of singing and dancing. We allow these things that really, minadin, a strict, staunch Beit Knesset wouldn't really have all of these things, but since it's also a Beis Medrash, we can eat and drink and be merry a little bit, and we also need the mezuzot. Also, the Shulchan Aruch 286, halacha 10. That's why we have mezuzot on the door. So Baruch Hashem, we have a little chazara of the halachot, and we have a little explanation of why we have mezuzot all over the place in our Beit Knesset. Good. So at the two dots, matkinan lo kohen achar. So this is going back to the first Mishnah on Daf Beis. We are metaken. We set up a backup kohen gadol. Pshita. Isn't it obvious? If ira bo psul, kodem tamid shel shachar. So if the first kohen gadol, the original kohen gadol, gets his psul, he gets his tameh or his problem, his mum, before the tamid shel shachar, the first olat boker. Mechanchi noisa, mechanech is really, it means like educate or appoint or bring in, inaugurate is the best word here. We inaugurate the backup Kohen, but Tamid Shel Shachar. We have him do the Tamid Shel Shachar. Now it's not that simple. He doesn't just walk up and do a Tamid Shel Shachar. He has to get dressed first. So we remember, it was actually 1 week ago today on Daf Hey. Remember, there's two ways. There's two ways to appoint a Kohen or a Kohen Gadol. Who remembers? I heard begadim and I heard shemen, oil. Right, the shemen and mishcha, the oil, or the begadim. And they said lechatchila, they should do both for 7 days. That's what Moshe did to Aaron and his sons. He dressed them and anointed them all 7 days of the miluim. But they said even if you only dressed him or only anointed him, even if it's only 1 day, it still works. There's a tremendous musar here, Rabbi. Tremendous. You thought we were starting late and skipping the tzidkas tzaddik. You wouldn't get any chassidus today. Okay, here's our chassidus for the morning. The begadim is what we call chitzoniut or chitzonius in Chassidus. It's the external appearance. So your begadim, what you wear, how you carry yourself, how you act, how you talk, how you interact, everyone knows that. The oil, the shemen and mishcha, is what absorbs into you. It's panemius, we call it. It's your inner attitudes. And we see that both of these aspects, your outward interaction and your inward attitudes, they're both important in Judaism. And the Kohen Gadol had to work on both. He had to work on the outer appearance, the trappings of his office, and his inner attitudes. And we have the same thing. Any mitzvah we're involved with. You know, you can go, before Sukkot, you can go and you get the most mekuder esrog. You can get a beautiful etrog that's just mamish. It's the most beautiful etrog you've ever seen. But the person, when he comes to make the bracha on his lulav, he can be spaced out. So you could have the chitzonius, you could have it's a gorgeous esrog, gorgeous, mehuder, mwah. But he's spaced out. He's doing na'anuim. He's like, thinking about something else. He doesn't have the panemius. Or you could have a person with a very pashut etrog. No one will look twice at his little etrog. And but he has such kavana. He's doing the na'anuim. He's thinking about the Zohar and the Kabbalah, and he's like way up in the atmosphere. Good to have both. Good to have both. But even if you only have one Rabosai, that's still good. It still appoints you as a Kohen. It still elevates you. Even if you're just worried about the chitzoniot, the mechudar aspects of the mitzvah. You know, having a beautiful Shabbos suit, a beautiful Shabbos table, you know, beautiful food, great stuff for Shabbos. Even if it's only the oneg, only the physicality you're worried about, that's still important, still good. Or even if it's only the inner part, you're worried about the kavana and the intention, that's also good. Great to have both, but even having one or the other still elevates you. So that's our chassidus for today about the two ways to appoint a Kohen or Kohen Gadol through wearing the begadim or the oil. So in this case, what happened is the first Kohen, the original Kohen, is puzzled now, and they're going to bring in the backup. So how do we bring in the backup? So either we anoint him, or really we put clothing on him. We put the clothing of the Kohen Gadol on him, and he does an avoda. He has to do something in the clothing. He can't just sit there in the clothing and be the Kohen Gadol. He has to do something in the clothing. So if the psul happened before the Tamid Shel Shachar, so we'll have the new guy, the backup Kohen Gadol, do the avoda. In the big day Kohen Gadol, he'll do the Tamid Shel Shachar. And now Mazel Tov, he's inaugurated as the Kohen Gadol. He's now officially the Kohen Gadol, not just the designated backup on the bench. So good. But what if the original Kohen Gadol got tameh or got a mum after the Tamid Shel Shachar? How do we inaugurate the backup Kohen Gadol? We put on him the belt of the Kohen Gadol. So since the belt of the Kohen Gadol, according to this opinion, was different than the belt of a Kohen Hedyot, we've now upgraded his Kedusha with the new belt. That sounds great if you tell me that for the rest of the year, on days that are not Yom Kippur, the belts were identical, but that the Kohen Gadol had a different belt on Yom Kippur. But if you say their belts were not identical, what's going to come out? Now we're going to find out. We're going to discuss this more on Amid Beis. Is that there's a machloket if the belt all year for the Kohen Gadol was made of pure linen, of boots, or if it was kilayim. It was actually wool and linen together. And since the Torah commanded us to, of course, we don't wear wool and linen together, but when the Torah commands it, then it's allowed because it's aseh doche lo taseh, that a positive commandment overrides a negative commandment. We actually have this Rabbi say by tzitzit, because our mitzvah to put tzitzit, al kanaf patil techelet, is written right next to the isra of kilayim. You would technically be allowed to put wool tzitzit on a linen beged. Technically, we don't do this. It's not the minhag, but technically, the mitzvah aseh is doche the mitzvah lo taseh. So technically, it would be fine. So here to the avnei shel kohen gadol, it could either be pure linen or it could be kilayim. It could be wool and linen together. So if it's different from the kohen, then simply putting the belt on the backup kohen gadol will elevate him to kohen gadol because now he has a new belt. It wasn't like his old belt; it's a new belt. So people will realize that he's now appointed the kohen gadol, and now he's doing an avoda in the new belt of the kohen gadol. People will realize it. Rabbi lovish shmone. No, he has to wear all 8 garments, according to the opinion that it was the same belt. According to the opinion that the belt of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur is the same as a Kohen Hedyot, then really he should have to wear all 8 garments. Let's step back for a second. There's 4 garments all of the Kohanim share, Kohen Gadol and Kohen Hedyot, right? They have their tunic and their michnasayim, the pants, and the mitznefet, the hat, and the belt, and the avneit. They all have that, but the Kohen Gadol is upgraded. So remember, he has the choshen mishpat, the ephod, the tzitz, and the meal. He has extra begadim. He has 8 instead of 4. So really, if you say that the belt is different, then the new Kohen, the backup, could just wear the 4 garments of the Kohen Gadol, the white garments that he wears on Yom Kippur. But if you say they're the same, he would have to wear all shmoni. He would have to wear the golden garments also. He have to wear those. Now remember, we're going to find out later a lot about the garments of the Kohen Gadol. They were very expensive. They would make a new set each year. We're going to find out on Amud Beit a little bit about that. But the golden garments he wouldn't wear for certain avodah Yom Kippur. You remember this from Yom Kippur when we read about the avodah. There's a lot of changing clothes going on because certain avodot of the Kohen Gadol were done in the golden garments. That's all 8, the normal year-round garments of the Kohen Gadol, and certain were done in the Big Day Lavan, the white ones, which is only 4 of. So that's what we're talking about. If the belt is not different, he has to wear all 8 garments, the whole regalia, Rabbi Sai, to do the avoda. And what does he do? Mechafach b'tzinura. And he turns over with a fork. So he turns over with a fork. So he goes up on the mizbeach, he stabs a piece of the ola that's burning his mizbeach, and he just turns it over. He had a Rav Huna. This goes like Rav Huna, the Amar Rav Huna, Zar shachafach b'tzinura chayav misa. That a non-Kohen who goes up there and turns something over with a fork is chayav misa. We're going to learn about this. This is if you're in the Smichas Chaver program, we just finished Hilchos Muktzah. We're going on to laundering, and eventually we're going to get to Bishul, God willing, about cooking. That even cooking something faster is chayav deraisa. It's a malacha. You understand? You go over to a frying pan and you turn the steak over, and now it's cooking faster. So this is the same thing the Kohen Gadol is doing. He's wearing the garments of the Kohen Gadol, and he's flipping something over. Rav Papa Amar, Avodasai Mechanche. Just doing an avoda of Yom Kippur, that is enough to inaugurate him. So even he just puts on the garments, or he gets anointed with the oil, and he starts doing the avoda, that's enough, even if he's not involved in the Tamid Shachar. Milo Tanya, haven't we learned in Brisa, Kula Kalim She'asa Moshe, all of the vessels that Moshe made, Meshichason Mekadishtan, that their Meshicha with Shemen and Mishcha and the Miluyim, that was Mekadesh them for temple service, Mishkan service. Then, Mikan Ve'elech, after this point, if they made new Kalim, Avodasan Menachachsan. Even doing an avoda with these Kalim would be Mechanech, would inaugurate them to serve in the Mishkan or the temple. Hachanami Avodato Mechanachto. So too, the backup Kohen Gadol, when he starts doing the avoda of Yom Kippur, that also inaugurates him officially as the Kohen Gadol. Kiyatar of Dimi Amar of Neto Kohen Hedyot, the belt of the Kohen Hedyot, Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, Chadamar Shel Kilayim, Chadamar Shel Boots. So one says it was Kilayim, wool and linen, one says it was pure linen. So this Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, is Shimon Bar Yochai. We're 1 week out. It's beautiful. We're 1 week out from Lag BaOmer, and here is Rabbi Elazar, who is in the cave with Rabbi Shimon in Maron, and he is having a machlokes with Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. So this is a 1 week preview to warm us up for Lag BaOmer. Beautiful. So there's a machlokes about the belt. Tistayim de Rebbe who de Amar Shel Kilayim. So let's learn now that it's Rebbe who said the belt was kilayim, wool and linen mixed. Tanya, ein ben Kohen Gadol le Kohen Hedyot. There's no difference between the Kohen Gadol and a regular Kohen. Ele ba'avneit. Only the belt is different. Divrei Rebbe. That's what Rebbe says. Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, Omer, af lo avneit. He says even the belt was not different. They had the same belt. Emat, let's say, inema b'shar yemot hashana. Are we talking about the other days of the year, not Yom Kippur? Tuva Ika. There's a lot of differences because, again, the Kohen Gadol had 8 garments and the regular Kohanim only had 4. Kohen Gadol Mishamish B'Shmona, he's got 8. Hedyot Arba with 4. Elalav B'Yom Kippurim, this must be on Yom Kippur. We're saying the only difference is the belt. That's what they're talking about. No, they could be talking about the other days of the year, not Yom Kippur. We're talking about the 4 garments that are the same, the tunic and the pants and the hat and the belt. When Ravin came to Eretz Yisrael, Amar Avneto Shel Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim Divrei Kol Shel Boots. He says everyone agrees that it's pure linen is the make of the belt for the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. B'Shar Yemos Shana Divrei Kol Shel Kilayim, and the rest of the year they agree that the belt of the Kohen Gadol was Kilayim. Lo Nechlaku Eli Bavneto Shel Kohen Hedyot. They disagree about the belt of a regular Kohen, a non-Gadol Kohen. Bein B'Shar Yemos Shana, Bein B'Yom Kippurim. And they disagree the entire year, even on Yom Kippur. Rebbe says, Shel Kilayim. He says the regular belt of a regular Kohen was Kilayim, was woolen linen. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Omer Shel Boots. And he says it was pure linen. And of course, if it's pure linen, it would be identical to the belt of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, and you couldn't rely on the belt to make him distinct, to make the backup Kohen distinct from a regular Kohen. You would have to put on all 8 garments, or do the avoda, in that opinion that the avoda would inaugurate him. Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak, Afana Namitanina. We also learn this in a Mishnah. Al Bisaro, his pants will go on his flesh. Ma Talmud Lomar. What is the Torah teaching us? Yilbash. So it also says Yilbash. So let's get the pasuk because this is important. It says in Vayikra Perek Vav, V'lavash HaKohen Mido Vad, and the Kohen wears clothing, measured clothing of linen, Umichnas Vad, and linen pants Yilbash Bisaro. He wears on his flesh. V'heiri mesadeshin. This is by Truma Sadeshin, the famous first avoda of clearing out the ashes from yesterday. Remember, we always start by cleaning up yesterday and start on a clean slate. Asher tochal ha'esh, that the fire is eaten at the olah, from the olah of yesterday. Ala mizbeach v'samatil mizbeach. He puts the ashes on the ash pile next to the mizbeach. But we see v'lavash hakohen mido vad mechlas vad yilbash obisro. We see this word lavash, the shoresh lamed veshin. We see it twice. So why does it have to say al bisaro maltamad lomar yilbash? We already said lavash al bisaro, and now it says again yilbash. We have this twice. Lahavi mitznefet va'avne. This includes his turban, his hat, and his belt, because the pasuk only said his midovad, his tunic, and his michlazavad, his pants. You might have thought you did Truma Sadeshin just wearing the shirt and the pants, and not the hat and the belt. So we have this extra lavash that says you have to wear all 4 garments of the Kohen to do the Truma Sadeshin. Harama Sadeshin, so that's what you need for Harama Sadeshin. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Doisa Omer, the Havi Big Day Kohen Gadol, Yom Kippurim. So this actually includes, this extra lavash includes begadim that belong to the Kohen Gadol, used by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, Shen Kisherim, that they could be reused, the Kohen Hedyot, for Kohen Hedyot. So he's saying they're identical. Since the belt of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur is shel boots, is pure linen, that all 4 of the basic garments of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur could be recycled and worn by a Kohen Hedyot, because they're all the same garments. Rabbi Omer, Sheitz Shuva Badavar. So Rabbi does not agree to Rabbi Daisa. He says there's two answers to this. Chada, they have Neder Shel Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim, Lo they have Neder Shel Kohen Hedyot. He says, first of all, I don't hold the belt was the same. I hold the belt of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur was not the same as a Kohen Hedyot for the whole year. Then also begadim sheishtamsha behen kedusha chamora, garments that you've used for a very chamor, a very stark kedusha Yom Kippur. They went into the Kodesh Kodashim Yom Kippur. To shamash behen kedusha kala, a regular Kohen's going to wear them for Hamas Hadeshen. So you're going to take the big day Kohen Gadol that yesterday were in the Kodesh Kodshim and doing the most chamor service that we remember. We just learned this week that a lot of Kohanim would pass away because they were not tzaddikim. They had bribed their way into the office, and they came to do the ketoret lifnayo lifnim. They came to the Kodesh Kodashim, the inner sanctum, and they offered their ketoret a little bit wrong, or the wrong kavanah. They weren't such a tzaddik. They passed away right there in the Kodesh Kodashim. That's happened so often that, remember, we compared the Bayis Rishon to Bayis Sheni. There were 300 plus Kohanim Gedolim during Bayis Sheni for 420 years. So a lot of them didn't even live out a year because on Yom Kippur a lot of them passed away. So that you see how chamor this is, that the Kohen Gadol had to be mamish at tzaddik, mamish have the pnimius and the chitzonius in line. He had to be really on the level. It was mamish kedusha chamura. So you're going to recycle those same begadim he wore for a Kohen Hedyot. It sounds very strange. Elamatam alamar yilvash. So why does the pasuk say lavash and yilbash? It repeats the verb twice. The Rabbi says shchak et shechakim. It includes worn out garments. So even worn out garments are a little bit worn out. They don't have holes in them because that's puzzle. But they're a little worn out. Those are still kosher. Tosfos has a problem. Tosfos has a problem with this. The second Tosfos on the daf is itzrich kra. We need the pasuk. Lo temeki hechi de metush tashin. That ones with the holes. Makarayin, they have a rip in them. Psulin, those are definitely puzzle. This is a review from Zvachim, Daf Yotches, because of Bahu, because it says that the garments of the Kohen Gadol are lechavod l'tifaret. Lechavod l'tifaret, they're for honor and glory. Hachanami shachakim lifsalu. So we say that if they're a little worn, they don't have any rips, they don't have any holes, but they're a little bit worn out, they're used. We would say also, da'ain on the use of makam mashiris, because we don't have poverty in a place of riches. We use this all the time, this phrase, Ein Aniyus Makam Mashiris, regarding the temple, that everything there should be beautiful, should be the Kavod Tifaris, should be upgraded, should be very nice. So we're going to see when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a lot of plaques, because we're going to donate a lot of money to make sure everything in the temple is gorgeous. So there's going to be a lot of plaques for the donations. But there's this inyan that you shouldn't use things that are worn out there. Good. So he's saying that's why we need the pasuk. We need really an extra word in the Torah to let a Kohen wear a used garment, because otherwise we thought l'kavod tifaris, everything should be perfect, everything should be new. So that's the Rosh Shchachim. Va'az Rabbi Dose l'taimeh. Rabbi Dose, who says you could reuse the big day Kohen Gadol for Kohen Hedyot, he goes with his reasoning. The Tanya, the Bright says, Chinicham Sham, you leave them there. So this pasuk says, Va'aharon el ohel moed, ufashat et big day habad, asher lavash bevo'o, el kodesh chinicham sham. He leaves the garments there. We're about to read this in the Torah about the avodas Yom Kippur. He leaves the clothes there. There's a lot of changing of clothes, but the special clothing he wore in the Kodesh Kodashim, chinicham sham. He leaves them there. Melamed shetunin geniza. They need a geniza, like a worn out siddur. Something like this. They have to be buried, they have to be put away. They have this special kedusha. He says they don't really need to be buried in geniza. Just you can't use them next year for Yom Kippur. We're going to learn out later in Yoma they would make a new set of very expensive, fine material, a new suit every single year. So he says you couldn't use them for next Yom Kippur Acher, but you could use them for Kohen Hedyot this year. There's an amazing shaila, and I can't remember who they asked, but there was a survivor of Shoah, and he was getting very old, and he wanted to be buried in his concentration camp uniform. He said that it would be a kapara for him to be buried in this. And they said, I don't know. The Chevra Kadisha says, nah. They went to a posek, and he said, we're very, very exacting about the minhagim of the Chevra Kadisha. The minhagim is to be buried in the tachrichim, the shrouds like everyone else. But what you should do is put them in the aron with you. That when the Chevra Kadisha buries this man, he should wear the same thing as everyone else, but the uniform from the camp, it should go in with him. It should be chinicham sham. It should be like a geniza with him, and that'll be enough of a kapara for him. He doesn't have to actually wear it. So it's an amazing thing. Amazing he still had it after all those years. But it's chinicham sham. It's like this garment has acquired a kedusha, so it can't be reused. It can't be recycled for the next Yom Kippur. According to Rabbi Dosa, for everyone else, they say it can't be recycled at all. Can't be reused at all. It needs a geniza. Tana Rabbanan irabo psul umino acher tachtav. So if the Kohen Gadol got a pasul, and they inaugurated the backup Kohen Gadol. Rishon Chos Levadasa. So when the Tuma is over, the first Kohen Gadol, the original, goes back to work. He goes back to being the Kohen Gadol. Sheni Kol Mitzvahs Kahuna Gadol Alav. And the second one, he has all the respect and the authority of the Kohen Gadol, but he can't do the work because the first one's back in business. Divrei Rabbi Meir. This is Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Yossi Omer Rishon Chos Levadasa. Sheni Eino Raoi. But the second one is not Roi, lo the Kohen Gadol, lo the Kohen Hedyot. So Rabbi Meir is saying that the backup Kohen Gadol is still the backup Kohen Gadol. He still has the position of Kohen Gadol. In theory, he could do the avoda. But Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, Omer, Rishon Chos Levadaso, Sheni Eino Roi. Why is he not Roi? Lo the Kohen Gadol, lo the Kohen Hedyot. He can't be a Kohen Gadol anymore because the first one's back in business, and he can't be a Kohen Hedyot either. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Maaseh Yosef ben Elam, and there's a story of Maaseh of Yosef ben Elam, who was backup Kohen Gadol, but Tzipori, who was from Tzipori. She'irabo psul b'Kohen Gadol. The original Kohen Gadol got a psul, minuhu tachtav, and they appointed this Yosef ben Elam from Tzipori. And when the Tuma was over for the original, they said the first Kohen Gadol goes back to work. Sheni Eino Roi, lo the Kohen Gadol, lo the Kohen Hedyot. And sorry, Yosef ben Elam, you're stuck. You can't serve as the Kohen Gadol, and you can't even serve as a Kohen Hedyot. Kohen Gadol, why not? Mishum Eva. Because the original Kohen is going to be jealous whenever the backup Kohen, he's only the backup. And he's going to come and do Kohen Gadol type of voda. No, it's going to have jealousy and bad feelings between the two of them. Kohen Hedyot, Mishum Malin B'Kodesh Lo Meridin. He can't be a Kohen Hedyot. He can't go back down to being a regular Kohen, because once we've raised him up, Malin B'Kodesh Lo Meridin, we don't bring him back down. Rabbi said there's an amazing Gemara, one of our favorite Gemaras in Brachos Chav Ches, Brachos Korach, uses the same exact argument with a very different outcome. And that was the famous Maaseh of Rabbi Gamliel had a fight with Rabbi Yeshua. And it was an argument over Tfilas Arvis Reshut Chova. If Mariv is really a Chova, and there was a machlokes Rabbi Yeshua and Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel embarrassed Rabbi Yeshua, made him stand up in front of everybody, and they got together and they said, Rabbi Gamliel, it's too much authority. You understand, Rabbi Gamliel was right after the Churban. He was trying to centralize rabbinic authority, and he didn't want any discontent, any machlokes, so he was really asserting authority. They got very upset. They took him out of his position, and they appointed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And this is the famous Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah who says in our Haggadah Shel Pesach, Hareini keven shivim shona, it's like I'm 70 years old and I didn't make the drosha. He wasn't 70 years old, he was 18 years old, but he got white hairs, so they would accept him as the Nasi temporarily. It seems they may have meant it permanently. So he was temporarily the Nasi, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, even though he was only 18 years old. And then Rabbi Gamliel went and made peace with Rabbi Yeshua, and they agreed he should come back. But what happened when he came back? So over there in the Gemara Brachos, they have a very different outcome. They said, listen, we don't want to depose Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah because now we've elevated him to be Nasi. But Rabbi Gamliel is going to have a problem with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah being the Rosh Yeshiva. He's older and he was the head before. So what are they going to do? So they had actually a timeshare. They had a timeshare of the Rosh Yeshiva. That Rabbi Gamliel was Rosh Yeshiva, gave the drasha for 2 or 3 Shabbatot in a row, and then Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had like 1 Shabbat a month, something like this. They had a timeshare agreement. So he said it was a little bit different there. We didn't have this concept of the Kohen Gadol. There can be only one Kohen Gadol. There's only one Kohen Gadol. There's only one Aron a Kohen. But by the Nasi, by the rabbinate, by the Rabbanis there, they actually worked out a timeshare agreement. So it's an amazing thing. It had a bit of a different outcome here. The Tosfot here, he does point out that it's not necessarily, it seems this Eva, Mishum Eva, it's a Derabanan. That Deraisa, the backup Kohen Gadol, being raised to Kohen Gadol, Deraisa, he's a Kohen Gadol now. Now we have 2 Kohen Gadol's Deraisa. But Derabanan, Mishum Eva, we don't let him do it. But really it might depend. The Tosfos says there, he says, Devar Toli b'melech b'achav v'kohanim, he brings that often the king would have some say in who the Kohen Gadol was, like we talked about before. Sometimes a Kohen would bribe the officials to be raised to Kohen Gadol. Didn't always work out so well for him, but it was totally on the king sometimes, and the other Kohanim. It was, you understand, it was a little bit political sometimes towards the end of the Vayesheni. All right, well, let's finish up. It's great. Shemal Mikodesh L'Meridian, Amar Rabba Babrachana, Rabbi Yochanan, turning over the top of Yud Gimel, Halacha Rabbi Yossi. So the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, that he's stuck. He can't be continuous Kohen Gadol, the backup, and he can't go back to Kohen Hedyot. Mode Rabbi Yossi, Shim Avar V'Avad, Avodato Kashera. And that he would agree if the backup Kohen Gadol went ahead and did an avoda, and the Rashi points out in all 8 begadim of the Kohen Gadol, because if he's only wearing 4 begadim of a Kohen Hedyot, it's puzzle, because he needs to wear all the begadim, because he's already been appointed Kohen Gadol as the backup. So that would be Kashera. If B'diavad he does the avoda, he shouldn't do the avoda, Mishum Eva, but if he did it, the Raisi is a Kohen Gadol also, Kashera. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Chalacha Rabbi Yosei, Modi Rabbi Yosei, she met Rishon, if the first Kohen, the original Kohen Gadol, passed away, Shechozer Levadato, that the second Kohen, the backup Kohen, should go back and be Kohen Gadol now. He's waiting in the wings. Pshita, that should be obvious. He's a Kohen Gadol of the Raisa. Ma'udatain, but we would have thought to say, Chavilet Tzora Mechayim. We would have thought that it would bother the original Kohen Gadol to know that the second Kohen Gadol is waiting in the wings for him to die, waiting for him to die. Kamash Balan, we're not worried about that degree of Eva. There's an amazing point. Who prays for the Kohen Gadol to die? Trivia question. Who knows? Yeah, Ar Miklat. Somebody who, God forbid, Lo Aleinu, killed by mistake, goes to the Ar Miklat. He leaves when the Kohen Gadol dies. Because there's some responsibility placed in the Kohen Gadol. He didn't daven for such a thing not to happen. When the Kohen Gadol dies, he would leave. So the mother of the Kohen Gadol used to send cookies to the Ir Miklat, to the people who had killed by mistake. And we see there's an amazing thing. We see that in the Midbar, the 40 years in the Midbar, no one got killed by mistake. How do we know? Because when Aaron the Kohen died, everyone was upset.
So we see from here there was no one in a miklat, that no one killed by mistake and was in Golas temporarily, because everyone mourned Aaron HaKohen. So that's this Mishum Eva. No one wanted the Kohen Gadol to die when it was Aaron HaKohen, but later on it could become an issue. Shkoyach Rabosai. Good Shabbos.